Connecting people to God, His church, and His world has been the mission of Grace Fellowship for the past 26 years. For a generation, we have been seeking to live out the gospel in our communities by building bridges of connection with those far from God. We believe that the gospel of Jesus transforms lives and changes communities. We believe that the church is the only hope for a broken world and the fractured families in our communities. And we believe that God has planted us in this particular place and time for this particular purpose, to love and serve the community with the gospel by doing things few churches have ever done. From DeMott to Wheatfield, from Roselawn to Fair Oaks, from Couts to Lowell, from Hebron to Rensselaer, and all the crossroad communities in between. The community called Grace is called to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to serve the communities we call home. Together, we truly are for the community.
Hi, my name is Joanne DeFries, and my husband Mike and I have been attending Grace for 5 years now. I went to Olivet Nazarene University, and when we graduated, my husband got a job at Youth for Christ, working with teens, and the big thing we talked about back then was being Jesus with skin on. And so when I see a church, and a church is looking to serve God, that's what I'm wanting to see. What would Jesus do in this situation? And so many times we tend to go to church and go home, but that's not what God has called us to do. He's called us to go out into the world. Some people need their physical needs met. Some people need spiritual needs met. Some people just need an ear to listen to. It's not just physical needs, because so many times we think, oh, they need to be fed and they need to be clothed. Well, yes, that's a part of it. But anymore in today's society, there's so much more that people are needing beyond just physical needs. And if you look at the life that Jesus led, he did not just preach the gospel, but he actually met their needs. He met them right where they were at. And when he healed the leopard, he first healed his needs, and then he said, now, go and serve the Lord. You know, that he realized their physical needs needed to be met. And when you go out into your community and you serve your community, and the church sees that the community sees that you care about them, then they're going to listen to your message. But they're not going to listen to your message about Jesus if you don't do anything to help them. When people start serving Christ at a greater rate, you are going to see, I think, a multiplying effect. More people are going to come to know Christ. I mean, if you think about it, each person touches someone's life. And, you know, in our church, we've got a lot of people that attend. And if each person just made a difference in one life, can you imagine what that would be? And then that person makes a difference. It's huge how you can change a whole community. But it starts first with yourself, you know, getting yourself right where you need to be, and then your family, and then your community. I mean, just moving out. But if each person touches one person's life, it's amazing the difference you can make in a community.
My name is Tyler. I've been here at Grace Fellowship for about 4 years now. I was raised Catholic, and there were some things said in that Catholic church that kind of turned me away from religion a little bit. Like, I didn't stop believing, but I just didn't know what to believe for a while. After 8th grade, I just stopped going to church altogether. I would go occasionally with friends or some other family, but I just never felt like I was part of their home at any time, so I was never able to stick with any other church before. My current wife, actually, we were dating back then, and her family goes to Grace, and they always have. They didn't go all the time, but they would go occasionally, and I wanted to tag along because I hadn't been part of a church in quite some time. When I first saw them on the stage singing, I was immediately drawn in. Like, I felt like I had to be up on that stage with them, but I didn't think that was even a possibility at the time when I first started coming. Somebody else knew that, I don't even remember who it was exactly, but somebody else had reached out to me and knew that I was a singer, but didn't know like how good of a singer I was, and recommended that I reach out to try to become part of the worship team. It wasn't really something I had thought about before that moment. I didn't realize that, I didn't know what the process was like. Once I became part of Grace, especially after I started serving for Grace, it changed the whole outlook of my job as well. I work with a lot of teenagers who were juvenile delinquents, and I try to help them get their lives back on track. And then I work with a lot of parents who lost their kids to the state to try to help them get their lives back on track so the kids can come back home as well. Being able to be connected to God at this level helped me so much in my journey through my career as well, because it's just I feel like I'm bringing something else to the table. I'm helping people in ways that I never thought I could help them before. I think that the community would tend to come together more and help each other more as well when a church cares about them. There's always going to be people in need, and there's always going to be a lack of those services provided, so anything that the church can do to help is obviously going to make a difference in their lives.
Hi, my name's Katie, and my family and I have been attending Grace for about 3 years. My husband and I were both raised in the church, and I wanted a place for the future where we could raise our family, where we could all grow and be challenged, and Grace met a lot of those needs. And we've also had the opportunity to host a small group, to lead a small group. And I use the term lead loosely. I felt more like the discussion facilitator. It started with people that I knew, and with the exception of maybe one, would have called more of an acquaintance, knew their name by sight, but didn't have a personal relationship. Definitely not somebody I would have texted. The group of women that was part of that small group are now the people that I turn to if there's a crisis, and the peace and knowing that those girls are always there for me and have my back and have become such an important part of my life. That has just been one of the biggest blessings of being in this community. When we moved here 18 years ago, the people I got to know were my husband's friends, and they became my friends. But that small group, after being here for so long, those are my friends, those are my people, and I'm so thankful for that, because that was something that was really lacking a bit in my life. I had other close friends. It was just, I hadn't necessarily felt that tight bond of Christian fellowship and love that small group has given me. A lot of people come back to church after they have kids. Maybe they grew up in a church and they want to raise their kids that way, and so they're looking for a great experience for their kids. So when you can provide that for the children and provide something awesome for the parents as well, when you get that whole full circle, it really makes a big difference in people's lives. You're feeding everybody. You don't want to leave anybody at the table hungry, and that's one of the things I love about Grace.
There's no doubt that God has been in every work that we've put our hands and feet to. God has been good and faithful to us. Over the past few years, we've sensed this transitioning and wondering what the next generation of Grace Fellowship will look like. Looking back at what we've done, our leadership has sensed that there's even more that we could do in the future with what God has given us. To that end, we are beginning an initiative called For the Community. This work begins a new way for us to reach our area like never before. Simply put, this is about the gospel, the community, and you. The community you live in, the neighbors you live by, and the friends and family you live with. In order to do what we've never done, we've got to take some bold steps together. Here's what we have planned. First, we want to provide an indoor play space for children and families to utilize throughout the year, functioning as a community center of sorts. This new facility would provide a safe and inviting place for those who live in our area to gather for fun and fellowship at little to no cost to them. This kind of facility is currently not available in our area, so the impact would be substantial. Second, we want to provide additional resources for programs and ministries that target families in need. This includes after-school tutoring and mentoring, school adoption through Kids Hope, and fueling events such as Special Olympics and Night to Shine. Finally, we will undergo renovations to our existing building to make it a more conducive third space for community building and engagement. But this isn't all. At the end of our 3-year campaign, we want to be poised and ready to expand this vision to include master planning our 40 acres next door to fund ongoing ministries to the under-resourced and transitional segments of our society. These bold steps allow us to continue what we started years ago, leaving a legacy in Jesus' name. To the first generation of Grace, I want to encourage you. You are leaving a legacy by investing in the future. And to the next generation, you need to know that you have a legacy of faithful followers on which to build a very exciting future. Together, we can build the kingdom in our communities for our communities. The bottom line is this. We want Grace Fellowship to be known in the Tri-County area as the resource center that loves and cares for the community with the gospel of Jesus, to love those we live and work with, and to provide greater opportunities to connect them to God, His church, and His world. Altogether, these initiatives come at a cost of $1.2 million. This work is no small task requiring mediocre involvement. This is a grand vision that calls for all hands on deck and every heart engaged. This vision depends on God's guidance and blessing, but it also calls for sacrifice from every one of us, the willingness to go above and beyond by all who call Grace Fellowship home. We can't do it without Him, but He won't do it without us. I was a part of that first generation who sacrificed and surrendered so that God could make an impact in this community through Grace Fellowship, and I've watched the next generation rise up and find their place and expand that influence and impact. Does the risk, faith, sacrifice, and surrender that characterized the first generation of our church characterize the next? Absolutely. That and more. I couldn't be more excited about the future. Our greatest opportunities are before us. Our best days are ahead. The defining moment is now for the community.